Sure, okay.
Press play?
Yeah. So I've been writing about Muslim dating and marriage issues for the last few years, and I wanted a way to be able to showcase the issues that I've been writing about. Last year, I directed a photo shoot titled the Isms Project. I gathered women from across the country in which we highlighted 4 different isms: racism, colorism, ageism, and sexism. And we were really blessed to be featured in Newsweek, Washington Post, and in a video in AJ+. This year, we wanted to tell the story of women battling the stigma of divorce, sizeism, and ableism.
But no, I'm good. Like I want to do this. So I'm representing divorcism because I'm divorced, and it's like been one of the things that have been a struggle in like the getting remarried process. It's been actually the huge thing, and I talk about it on social media as well because so I hope that answers that question. Hi, I'm Kay. I'm 29 years old. I am from central Wisconsin, and I am an entrepreneur.
So for the Stigma of Divorce photo, I had 2 models, 2 different women represent their stories in that photo. And I wanted to set it in the farmlands of Bolinas so that people can understand that women that have been previously married have come into their new relationship with a lot of cultivation, a lot of growth, and that development that they had in their first relationship and in the growth and healing that they did after their first marriage is something that should be valued and appreciated.
It was troublesome. 2.5 years like of looking, because people would find it problematic once they'd find out I was divorced, or if their family did, cut off. I'm a convert, cut off. Like, I ran into that a bunch of times, but the most common thing was that I'm divorced. I don't want to be with somebody, I want to have a fresh start. I want to have someone who's never been with somebody, even if they were divorced. Like, I've been told by divorced men with kids, I don't want a woman who's been married and has kids, but like he has them himself. So I found that very perplexing.
My name is Shannon. I live in Teaneck, New Jersey, and I'm a registered nurse. I'm a pediatric home care nurse and also a pediatric school nurse. My age is 40, and I have a 13-year-old son. It has been at times very frustrating, I find it very difficult. My son is soon to be 13, and I never see him as a baggage. I see him as a blessing. And unfortunately, a lot of single brothers who have not been married before, they kind of hesitate when they find out that I have a son. They kind of see me as like a +1. So they hesitate because they don't know if they can take on the responsibility. It's a shame because in our Sunnah, in our religion, our Prophet, peace be upon him, he married widows, he married divorcees, he married women who had children, and he treated them very lovingly as like a stepfather role. I had brothers who had children for previous marriages where the children were majority of the time with the ex-wife, to the opposite extreme where I felt like the brother was looking for not so much a wife, but someone to be a caretaker, nanny type figure to his children.
Hey everyone, my name is Yasmin El-Hadi. I am a lawyer, comedian, and former matchmaker. Also a mom and a wife, but who cares? So we have that. We have a lot of I think discrimination and distaste against divorced women. I've felt that myself. Damaged goods. They use that word out loud to my face. Some men who were like serial divorcers, like they divorce multiple women, they keep going on to the next one. But for me, that has definitely been in the minority when I'm talking about the community that I've dealt with. And they'll say things like, I want a girl who's, super, like, I don't want to say it, but like if she could have like lighter eyes, that would be better for me. If she could just be, like a virgin, that would be good. Like, I really just don't want to marry someone. Like my first marriage, it just like wasn't even a good experience. I just like want to like have a clean slate. They'll say that, a clean slate, as if someone's a dirty slate, if they're in the same exact position as you. I've seen that, but I don't work with those kinds of people, and I'm like, bye, like immediately. So I don't like anyone who has, I think, expectations that I would not respect. But I've had those people. Like, I had a guy who was divorced, and he came to me and he was like, I'm looking for a Natalie Portman. Like, I'm sorry, what did you just say to me? He was like, like a Natalie Portman, that kind of look. And I'm like, why don't you just like find a good person?
Stereotypes exist regarding divorced women. And that, of course, contributes to a major distancing of remarrying, even though there may be a ton of eligible divorced women for marriage. Oftentimes men will pass on that and select or choose to remain unmarried longer than to marry a divorced woman. And all of that because of these just socially invented concepts of, well, she's divorced, as if that in and of itself is a category that we need to be afraid of. There's so many reasons for why there could be a marriage crisis, right? I mean, there's a disconnect from children and their parents. So there's either immigrant parents and children that are born in America or in the West. Then there's religious differences, cultural differences, financial differences. I mean, really every category has become now an obstacle.
I hear from many single people who are struggling to find a spouse, from married people who are struggling in their marriages and who are ultimately ending up in divorce. So I think there is a type of crisis, if you want to call it that. It's an easy way to describe the numerous challenges, the challenges that abound for both single Muslims and married Muslims. And, some of the research that I've been engaged in, and like I said, working in the community on the ground, can attest to those challenges.
People think that there's endless choice. I call it, what's behind door 7. Like, you're always thinking like, okay, yeah, I saw door 1, 2, 3, but like, no, door 7 is going to be better. And you're always thinking that there's something else that's better out there, and that because there's hundreds and thousands of choices, when actually what you've done is that because there's all this choice, you've deluded yourself to thinking that there's all this compatibility and everyone is compatible with you. And that's not necessarily true. So like, if you find someone who's compatible with you and they don't fit all of your criteria, like they've been married before, for example, or they have children, God forbid, which is crazy to me, that knocks them out of the running. And that's sad, and I think that's something that we have to push back against.
Yeah, oftentimes women have to feel or have that feeling as Muslim women that they have to settle down or have to make their marriage work because there is no other choice other than being married.
And then, of course, add to that psychological, mental health issues that sort of pile up. And unfortunately, in the past decade or so, the crisis has only gotten worse.
From women especially is this fear of being alone. Because of that fear, they're sometimes considering men who are not necessarily compatible with them or good for them, right? Or good for their dunya or good for their akhirah. Obviously, it's a beautiful thing to be married and to have a partner who can support you in life. But I think ultimately to remember that our relationship is directly with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and my self-worth is just purely because Allah has given me that self-worth without anyone else in the picture.
Sizeism is discrimination or prejudice against individuals because of their size.
My name is A. Ahmed. I'm 34 years old. I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and my ism is sizeism.
sizeism, we have the model holding a bunch of different tape measures to symbolize that she's constantly measuring herself with other women in the community, other women in the world, due to constantly changing beauty standards.
I feel like no one talks about being a plus size woman in the marriage community. Like nobody talks about it. And I feel like in general people do, but like not, and it's kind of just like pushed under the rug.
Many years ago, I walked into a party, all women I didn't know, all Muslim women, and one of the women was talking with her friends, people she'd known for a very long time, about the fact that she wanted to start looking online for a potential mate, for husband, and before she could even put herself out there, there was so much negative talk around, like, oh, are you ready to start looking? Are you going to lose weight first? There was a lot of assumptions that basically before she could even put herself in front of a potential husband, she was being told, you're not good enough to even try. A lot of times we get this pushback on the idea that sizeism is just a matter of preference. It's not, especially when the community is putting the stigma on a person well before any man says, well, I don't prefer you. How can, your sisters, your community, your parents go, well, you're not good enough to even put yourself out there, to try, to look, to, it's a terrible cycle throughout the entire process and throughout your entire life, to the point where a lot of women are feeling like they have to settle or whatever is available for them. And that can be for a dress, because what's available is the boxy, the worst, the most terrible thing that you can find. Or even for a guy, where you're like, oh, any guy that's interested, I just need to immediately accept.
Just for example, I recently had a brother reach out to me, and he wanted a full body picture. And, we met on one of the Muslim dating apps some time ago. And, on the app, I put full body pictures. And so he was like specifically asking me for my size. And if I had any intention of losing weight, because that's what he was attracted to. So, and that is pretty much like the underlying theme, is that they'll almost insinuate, even directly, indirectly, that, that I am. They're like, oh no, you're thick, or they may kind of, it's almost they're patronizing me.
A while back, a few years ago, and all they saw was my picture before they got to know me. So all they saw was what I looked like or my size, and without even talking to me, without even to know me, without even speaking to me, they said she needs to lose weight, she's too big, I don't want her, she's plus size, without even speaking to me. So they don't even know about my personality. All they know is what I look like.
I remember my parents put me on a diet when I was 7. And that's when it started. They would police what I would eat. And that would move also throughout my teen years. And, once I was getting a little bit older, I'd be compared to other girls. I'd be like within our community, I was compared to my sister because we looked starkly different. And her body at that time was the quote unquote ideal body. And, she had other, attractive features. They told me that nobody would marry me. I was put on diets left, right, and center. My dad would give me really dangerous, like now looking back, some diet medication to have me to lose weight.
There is this sense of that, you have to be the skinny, petite, or, essentially 5'3" and above girl, a bride that could be that ideal version. And, it's just an extra bonus if you're educated.
For ableism, the model is trapped in a fisherman's net. It tells the story of someone who is feeling trapped by not her disability, but by the stigma, by this idea placed on her that she needs to be treated a certain way, handled a certain way, that that she's different than everyone else. So she feels the stigma of ableism, of being treated differently, the discrimination as someone who, in this case, the woman's story was about her being hard of hearing, that makes her feel trapped and limits her in her search for love and marriage.
Yeah, we have a lot of ableism in our society, for sure. Like, I think Muslims, the minute they see someone who has, different types of abilities, or, has any kind of like hearing impairment, or a speech issue, or a physical ailment of some sort, they just like knock them right out of the running.
Hello, my name is Sana. I'm 33 years old, and my occupation is a supervisor for a small clinical laboratory. I'm hard of hearing. I wear cochlear implants, and I've been diagnosed with hearing loss since I was 4. With Islam, it's like generally kind of like in the same vein. Being a Muslim woman in the first place is always also relatively difficult. Being a Muslim woman with a disability is slightly more. So, like, going to Jummah prayers, or going to Eid prayers, or even like, Tarawih at night during Ramadan, like, those are all things that my family collectively did as a whole, but it was really difficult for me to find actual meaningful enjoyment because, despite, speaker systems and everything, like, it was just hard for me to follow what was being said, and really hard for me to really understand, what discussions people are having. Being in these areas where, there are no services or accessibility options for somebody who is hard of hearing has really made it difficult for me to form a meaningful connection with Islam. People hear the word hard of hearing, they're just like, oh no, I don't want anything to do with somebody like that, no matter how good their hearing is or whatever. I think it's definitely been really difficult, relatively speaking, just trying to figure out when and how I should bring up the hard of hearing thing if I'm meeting somebody. If I'm doing it face to face, it's really not a difficult conversation for me to have. I'm usually upfront about it. I've come to terms with my hearing. I've come to terms with what my limitations are, relatively speaking. But it's definitely, I think, nobody has ever said it to my face, but I think it's definitely something that people just don't want to deal with.
And I'm a matchmaker. And I facilitate between people a man and a woman who want to get married, and, try to match and facilitate and look how that's going to work out and make sure that they are a good match for each other. People, they're searching online and they try to, find someone, question, what do I do? I'm not sure I understand. What does that question mean? I'm looking to find out, what does that word mean? What is so they find my website and contact me and say, look, can you help? Can you connect me and understand by FaceTime what these questions are asking? And can you explain it to me?
It's hard for me to listen to what's being said, and especially in going to Quran classes or taking Arabic classes or anything like that, when your hearing comes into play, it's just a lot more stressful when people don't know how to accommodate your disabilities, and it makes you really feel like you are not part of the ummah, relatively speaking, because people aren't making space for you.
My husband is a hearing person, and I'm deaf, so that's a challenge. Wow. He didn't know anything. He didn't know any sign language. He didn't know how to lip read. He didn't know anything, but he wanted, I had to figure out, what is he saying? I had to look at him, watch him, and say, please, look at me when you speak, and, I need to look at you. I can't understand what you're saying, and it wasn't hard. It was hard. It wasn't fair for me, he would learn a little bit, but, his signing wasn't like expert, and it wasn't easy, and he couldn't move his hands in the right way. I had to learn to speak more and use my language and practice, and so we found, like a happy medium where I was communicating with some English language, and he was using some signs once in a while, but the communication was hard, but eventually it became successful. And we're married for, 33 years.
I was really happy that Isms was able to help sponsor this project. It's something that's really near and dear to my heart as a woman who has been trying to find love in marriage and battling the types of isms that were discussed in the first series.
I started using dating apps such as Salams because especially during the pandemic, it's really hard to find someone to get married to.
We care about shifting our users' focus towards things like character when they're seeking marriage. Compatibility is super important, and sometimes you lose that judgment when you're looking at things like age, whether the person was divorced or not. And every 2 couples gets divorced in the developed world. And for us to be living in a society that rejects that and still frowns upon it, especially for women, because we know that women are more scrutinized for those things, it's quite disheartening. And so we want to bring awareness to these issues, tackle these problems, and really shift people's focus towards character.
I think the biggest thing is it's not specific to people who are deaf or hard of hearing. That the Muslim community really needs to do better about disabilities. So many people see or hear that somebody has a disability and they instantly write them off without really figuring out how that person has either overcome or has learned to live with their disability.
I really do feel like if we really stuck to just some basic ethical principles of golden rules, treat people the way that you'd want to be treated, we would, I think, shift our ways of being.
In our society, I think particularly in the Muslim community, we're very used to grooming women to be wives. Your husband is going to love this if you know how to cook well, if you sit properly, if you pour the tea, if you're size 6. All of these things we groom the women, and very rarely, if ever, have I ever heard a mother say, well, your wife is really going to like this if.
I think that we need to teach, starting with even the next generation, teach them better values to hold in high regard when they're trying to find a spouse.
There's a few different categories that a person gets married to another person for, and all of that revolves around the degree of compatibility. Because of course the idea being, the more compatible you are with another person, the more you're able to align with them, communicate with them, and function with them.
And part of why, I wanted to connect with the work that you're doing is to be able to educate people that, that their ideals are actually creating more anxiety and worries and mental health issues in the community globally.
I'm also working on myself so that I can, as I said, attract what I want. I'm also going to singles events out in the community.
You on your own are self-worthy in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't need someone else to complete you or to be with you for that self-worth to increase.
Instead of seeing singleness as an incomplete version of yourself, rather you look at it like, this is time that I've been allotted to continue to work on myself and to take care of myself before that time comes where I may not have access to do so freely.
Just from talking to multiple Muslim sisters, and also from what I've experienced, is to not give up. Have something in your mind that is gonna keep pushing you to just not give up. If you're looking into getting remarried, to me, I didn't want to give up on love. People told me to settle. Don't settle.
That you may not go through the traditional ways of parenting, but that doesn't make you, something that's outrageous or outlandish, but community-wise, that may be a different thing, so self-acceptance is a big one through that work.
I take that as a personal charge that my son will, inshallah, grow up to be a man that will love a woman completely and fully for who she is and according to what is beautiful and righteous by Allah.
So we are the only Muslim friendship tool out there. In addition to having Salams Love, we have Salams Connect that facilitates friendships. We created this tool for women to be able to tap into their community, to connect with people that also have the same challenges, potentially scrutinized for the same issues, being able to connect with someone who is Muslim and have the same values no matter where you are in the world. That's just something so special. Sponsoring projects like this, working on our product, improving awareness and using our platform is all part of our own personal development as a company, and we hope to make a difference in that regard.
Showcasing how women behind these profiles, their real life women, are feeling when they are being overlooked. We want to make sure that this message comes across to change people's perspective when they are searching for marriage through this digital process. This stigma does not just exist virtually, however, it also exists in, offline. When people go to seek marriage from matching professionals, from Muslim marriage councils, we talk to various individuals in the Muslim community, prominent figures who are in the marriage facilitation space, and they say they see these different stigmas as well.
We hope to tackle more of these issues and work to solve them within the products or within our platforms so that we can make the user experience a bit more digestible.
I think so often when people are looking to get married, they're focusing on the other person and the characteristics they are looking for in that person, and they forget that really the process needs to start with themselves first. So people need to start with self-reflection. We have an extensive section in the toolkit that focuses on how people can personally prepare, what needs to happen before you engage someone in the process. I think people first need to determine if they're ready for marriage, right? Like, what does readiness mean? Is it emotional readiness? Is it financial readiness? What kind of readiness are we talking about? And then also to identify who they are. I think for many people, it begins with the question of, who am I? What are my values? Where am I spending my time? What's important to me? And then to identify their expectations about marriage. Why do I want to get married? What is marriage going to offer me? And I think after doing that work, then people can be ready to ask themselves, what are the characteristics I'm looking for in a partner?
Overall, I hope that this project reaches people and gives them hope. I didn't want it to be something that's indicates that there's no hope, that there's no way out of the marriage crisis in the current society, when it's all about looks, it's all about outside perception. We as a community, as Muslims, need to remember what's important and need to hold steadfast to Islamic values and use those and different stories from the time of our Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, to use those to guide us in finding love in marriage in the Islamic way. So let's go do what we have to do and have fun. Everybody knows who they're riding with? Yes. No.